to the place where abundant lives abide. Come to the place where you will find new life. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The greatest weapon. 48,231,700 people died in World War II. Almost 50 million people. And Adolf Hitler and the Axis powers thrust the world into an unbelievable conflagration. But some actions were taken that really brought the war to its conclusion. Some actions were taken that put the war in perspective. It was the largest seaborne invasion in history. It was called Operation Overlord. It took place June 6th, 1944. Yes, it was called D-Day. It took place around midnight. 24,000 British, Canadian, and American soldiers landed on a beach in France called Normandy. They attacked the western part of Europe, which is occupied by the Germans. And this action actually led to the end of Germany's power. D-Day was a great demonstration of military force. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. Well, in April of 1945, Mr. Roosevelt died. And the war raged on. Harry S. Truman became president. And President Truman had one of the most difficult decisions that any president has ever had to make. A new bomb had been invented. One unlike any explosive device in history. It had come about partly out of the amazing brainchild of Albert Einstein. And we didn't have to use that bomb. But the burden on the shoulders of the president was, shall we fight conventionally? And many, many more thousands would have been added to that list. Or do I employ this weapon and bring it to a close? I don't envy him his decision. But he chose to release on the world the first weapon of mass destruction. It was carried aboard a B-29 bomber nicknamed the Enola Gay. It dropped that bomb on Hiroshima. In less than 1 second, it expanded over 900 feet. 1/3 of the buildings in Hiroshima were gone. 4.4 miles were instantly incinerated as if they were never there. Captain Robert Lewis saw the city explode in ash and fire, and he exclaimed, "My God, what have we done?" The 9th of August, 1945, another A-bomb exploded, this time over a place called Nagasaki. Nagasaki was chosen because there was a war plant there called Mitsubishi War Plant, and they wanted to take it out. And they did. The hills around Nagasaki had caused a different effect from Hiroshima. but it was nonetheless devastating. 23,000 were killed instantly. 23,000 were wounded, and over 1,900 were missing. The weapons of war. This group in northern Iraq right now, it's called ISIS. ISIS, Islamic State of Syria and Iraq. They had a group of people stranded up in northern Iraq on a mountain, and the president thought he was going to have to send in troops primarily to get those people to safety. But he made a discovery. The use of firepower from the air against certain strategic ISIS sites, as they're trying to really create a caliphate, a new Islamic State, part of Iraq and part of Syria. But those explosions from the air rendered ISIS incapable, and it broke the hold on many of those people, and many of them were able to get off of that mountain. The weapons of war. But I ask you tonight, I wonder if you and I are really, really cognizant, if we're really aware, if we're really, really thinking of the greatest weapon that has ever existed or ever will exist. And you have that weapon. You have it. And I share this with you tonight because I need you to understand that the weapon of prayer is far greater than any weapon man has ever invented. Why? Because it connects one to God. Just let that marinate for a moment. It connects us to God. Is there a greater power than God? We should be careful of how we understand God. And if we understand him correctly, it will change our whole prayer life. It'll change our whole life. First of all, I asked the question this morning, and I pose the same question to you. And the question is this: are there miracles? Listen carefully to how the question is phrased. I like the word, it's called the syntax, the way it's arranged. Are there miracles with God? What do you say? No, they're not. There are miracles in God. Watch your preposition, but not with God. Because you have to understand, when you talk about God, who are you talking about? They describe miracles as suspending the laws of nature. Well, okay, I understand that, but God made nature. So why does he have to suspend anything? You have to understand who God is. You see, with God, walking on water is no different than walking on the land. He doesn't need either. You didn't get that. I mean, it's hard for you to walk on water because sometimes it's hard for you to walk on the land. But what God does, so if God raises somebody from the dead, what does death mean to God? When you understand God's position in the grand scheme of things, then I raise this interrogative. If recession or depression hits America, is God broke? Okay, so that settles that. If a bank closes, do they take any of God's money with them? Is God ever unemployed? Is God ever sick? So God is not subject to the conditions of this world, which really ought to teach us why prayer is important. Because if we would pray, and as our elders said, pray right, it would connect us to a God who is over all the circumstances. Here is the tragedy of most Christians. We don't know what it means to be a Christian. We've so tied up the Christian life with moral living. And I keep telling you, that's not the standard of Christianity. although morals are important. You're missing it. Whether you drink or smoke, it doesn't make you a Christian. That's not it. Moral behavior, I'm going to tell you again, there are people who don't claim Christ who have high morals. So that can't be the point, is it? The point is so linking us to God that you and I actually begin to live a life that makes us more than mere humans. I'm going to let that fall on you like a bomb. See, the problem is that the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian is the non-Christian is all flesh. All the Christian has is his body and his mind, his education, his intellect, and his possessions. That's all he has. That's all he has. He doesn't have anything else. The Christian has his body, his mind, his education, his intellect, and divine power living on the inside. We prayed for depressed people on Sunday, and all of them are probably broke. I didn't pray for one millionaire Sunday. I didn't pray for one person Sunday who's ever won an Academy Award or made a movie or who starred on Broadway or who lived in a mansion in California, but a man killed himself not because he can't pay his bills, not because he's broke, but that same devil, you've got to understand, he doesn't care about the rich or the poor. He just wants to take you out. But I have no business living like I don't have God in me. Because when he came to the end of his rope, he couldn't stand to face another day. But when God lives inside of you, broken, sad, and worn out, and disgusted, and busted, but you say, but I'm still holding on. Why? Because they that wait upon the Lord. We've got to stop living like we don't know God. If God is in you, you can't live like a sinner. And I'm not talking about moral behavior, but the sinner's worried, you worried. The sinner's down, you're down. The sinner's depressed, you're depressed. Wait a minute. You have something in you. He giveth power to the faint, and them that have no might, he increases strength. Come on, folks. Christ in you, the hope of glory. So prayer connects me with I don't really want to say the greatest power, because I don't like to talk about God in those terms. God is not great. God is not greater. God is not greatest. That is not true. God is just God. Did you hear what I said? God is the greatest. Greatest than what? That's comparative. I have a book, and a book called The Book of Lists, and I had it as a child, a young college student. It was interesting because it lists the greatest men that ever lived, and they made a mistake. Because the first person on that list was Jesus. He should have never been on that list. They should have picked somebody else. Because the problem is, the second person means he could have been close to the first person. But Jesus is not a man. He's God and man. So that just messes up the second person. Because you don't get close to God. He's the God-man. And don't ever make that mistake. I hear some people over-talking in the church, and they'll say about a preacher, thank God for this God-man. That's theologically wrong. I'm the man of God. I'm not a God-man. Jesus is the God-man. That's a theological term. God is God. That's it. That's it. He's not a great power. He is power. Everything exists because he exists. And I'm going theological now, including evil. Even evil needs the oxygen of God in order to exist. Oh, God. Nothing exists without God. The devil needs God to exist. An atheist needs God to give him the breath to say there ain't no God. You gotta know who you're talking about. And you link to him through prayer. And it changes everything. But not if you see prayer some weak and, well, let's go pray. Or else if you try this trick that some of you try of prayer and witnessing and spiritual activity being left for what you call the super saints. Some of you count on the rest of us to make sure you get through. You don't know the word for yourself. You don't study it for yourself. You don't pray for yourself, but you know everybody from the third row up, a deacon or an elder or a deaconess, if you get in trouble, then you run to us. Pray for me, Bishop. But if you knew who you were, you would say, I don't need J.D. Wiley. These signs shall follow them that believe. You leave it to us to worship for you. And I mean, you should stand on the pulpit with me sometime and watch. Some of you think that when you pay that offering, it's like you go to the theater. You pay us to worship for you. And you know how I know? Because you tell them to lift their hands. It takes 4 or 5 times to get your hands up. Some of you won't sing the song. I don't know them hymns you be singing. You know, Father, I stretch. And I look at people and it grieves me because we as pastors have made a terrible mistake. It's our fault, not yours. We made a terrible mistake. We've turned the pulpit into a stage and the chairs out there in the audience. And many of you come and just sort of sit back like you're at the theater saying, show. And I'll tell you, many of you think you watch, when you see Karen or Shauna or Damien or me, you do us like American Idol. That's a pretty good sermon. I didn't like that sermon. Oh, so now you're the judge on my sermon, huh? I give him a 3. I give him a 7. Choir wasn't singing good today. How about you be the choir? How about you be singing so loud the choir can't nobody say, shut up, let the choir sing. Preacher was preaching one day and he had a horrible message. It was just terrible. And in the language used of the church, he was dying a horrible death. That's what preachers say when the sermon's not going well. He died. And one old mother was in that corner just shouting and praising God. And yes, sir, bless his holy name. And the preacher accosted her and said, Mama, I didn't do too well tonight, did I? She said, son, that's the worst sermon I've ever heard in my life. I said, well, Mama, why were you shouting and like that? She said, son, let Mama tell you something. It's your job to preach. It's my job to shout. And I'm going to do my job whether you do yours or not. If the choir don't get it right, you ought to have such a praise in you. It's not a show. And so much of what we preachers do, we turn it into a show, and you just enjoy the show. How can you tell when people are going to a show? Because whenever you leave church wanting to do something for God. If you don't leave church wanting to do something for God, you went to a show. See, if you go see Beyonce or Jay-Z or Fred Hammond or Stevie Wonder, how many times do you go to a Jay-Z concert or go see Frankie Beverly May and leave and say, oh, I got to pray more. Ooh, I got to witness for the Lord. Ooh, I got to get in my word. No, because you just went to the show. So if you leave church with no desire to witness, no desire to pray, no desire to grow, we didn't grow you, we entertained you. And we're guilty. I don't like for comedians to make fun of God. But it doesn't bother me when they make fun of preachers in church, because sometimes we need to be made fun of. Some of the stunts we pull, some of the asinine things we do, I don't blame them. Some of that stuff is funny. Because it's not here for entertainment. And we let so much junk get into our worship. It has ruined us. So we think it's just a game. It's not a game. Jesus never said go make church members. He said make disciples. Somebody asked me what was my vision for Life Center. I guess I've never really completely clarified it, but I will. But I can tell you one thing. One of the goals for Life Center was that every ministry in the church's first mission would be discipleship. So that if you're an usher, a choir member, a deacon, a trustee, no matter. See, my first goal when this church was founded was not to make you a good usher or a good deaconess or a good choir member or a good usher, but to make you a disciple, and the disciple could become an usher or a deacon or a choir member. See, what we do is that we make people deacons and ushers and choir members and college or preachers and not disciples. That's why we have so much hell out of them. Because they're undiscipled deacons. They're non-disciple choir members. I sure wish the choir would get right. Lead the choir along. We didn't disciple them. We made them choir members. You can teach people to sing, but only God can make you a Christian. See, I can teach you how to open the door, close the door, seat people, and you can see people with hell in your heart, but you can't serve the Lord with hell in your heart. You don't hear me teaching, do you? You could be on the praise team and just sing your heart out and be full of hell, but when you follow the Lord, he'll get the hell out of your heart. Whatever ministry you're in, it's supposed to make you a learning, growing disciple. Yeah, we need ushers, but we need ushers or whomever who've been discipled unto Jesus Christ, made in his image. And that's why we're not changing the world. It's not your fault, it's our fault. We don't equip you to change the world. We equip you to come to church and watch the show. Prayer, most important component, is worship. Now, I want to say this very quickly and I'll move on because I can't labor this forever and ever. But see, prayer is, see, the disciples, pay attention, the disciples never said to Jesus, Lord, teach us to usher or to preach. Teach us to what? Uh-huh. See, we're not, teach us to pray. Why? Because they watched his prayer life. I heard Ed Young say they'd wake up early in the morning. It was still dark. They count the disciples, all 12. Where is Jesus? Off somewhere praying. Sometimes Dr. Young said he'd walk in front of them. What's he doing up there? He's praying. Or he'd walk behind the group. What's he doing? He's praying. Or after he'd minister, he'd go away and pray. We minister and go out to eat. He ministered and went away to pray. And so one day they said, Lord, teach us to pray. Not how to pray, but to pray. Like you pray. Teach us the connection with God that you have. And so he said, here's how you pray. Our Father, stop. You have to understand how that hit the ears of the Jews. Who was God to them? Oh, hold up. It took nerve. Father, are you losing your mind? When Abraham saw God, he was out there in the desert floor with those animals laid out on the floor and walking through blood up to his ankles, and he fell into a deep sleep and a furnace passed through the animals. That was God. Or God was on Sinai in 19 Exodus, and the mountain shook and it caught fire, and God said, put a rope around the mountain because if anybody touches it, they're dead. And it was so fierce, they said, don't talk to us, God, let Moses talk. And then when the tabernacle was created, that was the outer court. And it got progressively darker. Then there was the inner court with that candelabra and that table of showbread and that candelabra behind that curtain. Ooh, spooky. Behind that curtain. On the mercy seat that stayed in darkness all the time was God forbidding back there, don't come close, don't get close, don't do that. One man even touched the ark to keep it from falling and fell dead. You didn't mess with God. And when Isaiah saw him, he didn't look friendly. He was high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple, and the doorpost shook. And he was so fierce, the angels wouldn't even look at him. They veiled their face and just cried, holy. When Ezekiel saw him, my God, Ezekiel was sitting by the river Kibar in Babylon, and out of the east comes this amber cloud, as a yellow cloud, and out of that cloud came a wheel, and there was a wheel inside the wheel, and there were eyes inside of the wheel, and there was thunder and lightning, and he was God with the seraphs and the cherub riding on a chariot. Look, you stay over there, okay? But the Jesus said, no. Call him Papa. Him? Yeah. Papa. Say what? God. No. El Shaddai. No. Jehovah Jireh. No. Elohim. No. Papa. Papa. My title is bishop. That's not who I am. That's not my name. It's who I am. Pastor, whatever. And some of y'all go through all that problems. I don't know why I don't do it. Bishop, stop it. Stop it. Don't worry about that. It's not important. It's a title, but it's not who I am. But all of you can call me different things, and bishop, pastor, elder, whatever, mister, I don't care. But this morning, there was somebody here. There's 3 of them in this world. And they call me a certain name, and when they do, the whole world stops. When they say, Daddy. My God. Especially them girls. And they never asked me for anything except they first said, Daddy. Oh, it's over there. Here, take some. And one of them especially, and used to be, they don't do it so much now, even if mama wanted something to go, they'd send the one who looks just like me. Because they figure I can't deny myself. But you got to understand my relationship with those 3. I created them. I had some help. I brought them into existence. They wouldn't be here if I hadn't done what I did. Bone of my bone and flesh of my blood goes through their veins. And when they call me Daddy and Kayvon said, Papa, the world stops. Because of the relationship. They don't call me Elder Wiley. They don't call me Dr. J. Douglas Wiley Taylor. They say, Daddy, and I say, what you want? I'll move heaven and earth. See, it bothers me that black America and white America don't understand each other. They're talking about the N-word. Well, it's always been nigger. Why is the N-word now? But they don't understand. They made it pejorative. But we made it something else. We've always taken what they did and turned it around. They gave us Christianity to tie us down, and it turned around and set us free. And oftentimes when the slaves sang, see, the slaves could be subversive. You know that? When they sang, everybody talk about heaven ain't going to heaven, they was talking about NASA. When they say swing low, sweet chariot, they meant Harriet Tubman was coming through. Y'all ain't listening to me. So everything they gave us, we turned it around. So now they're so sophisticated, the N-word. But see, it means something different to me. Yes, it does. It's pejorative to some people. But in my nomenclature, when you say, that's a bad nigga, that's a compliment. I told Joel Gregory, a white man, I said, I'm getting ready to induct you into the black world. I said, Joel, you a bad nigga. And he said, Dr. Wiley, I've heard that before. When my woman says, that's my nigga. I could take this a little further, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say that for the marriage ministry. Yeah, wait till I get in the marriage ministry. I'm going to hook you up. You with me already, aren't you? Oh, yeah? Okay, that's enough of that. That's enough of that. Let me get back in the spirit. Lord, hold me up. Keep my mind clear, Holy Ghost. It's relationship. Wrong person called me nigga, I'm going to knock you out. You ain't in the family. You don't try to impress God with your prayers and your theological knowledge. Oh, thou Jehovah Jireh. Oh, thou El Shaddai. Of the unique relationship. He has brought you into his family and made you accepted in the beloved through Jesus Christ. He is your papa. Our Papa. And then he says, who art in heaven, which means I understand you are above everything. You sit enthroned above everything. You're above all the stuff going on in the world. In Ferguson, Missouri. We need a Father in heaven, y'all. Ukraine, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, the streets of New Orleans. We need somebody above all of this. Our Father who art in heaven, that's worship. We are designed for worship. We are made for worship. We're created for worship. But I want to say one thing about worship, and I'm going to move on. But you become like what you worship. Worship is so important because God made the human spirit. Hear me tonight. God made the human spirit that everything in the world is beneath you. Nothing, no car, no house, no clothes is equal to you. If you make it equal to you, you reduce the value of who you are. If a clothes, all a suit can do, whether it came from K&G or Saks, all it does is cover your nakedness. A car can cost $500,000, or a hoopty costs $35. If it gets you down the street, it served its purpose. You give value to the car doesn't give value to you. Only God is above you. And so when you worship God, you attach yourself to that which is higher than you. Worship expands the spirit. Worship increases the character. Worship puts you on the level where you really belong. And if you worship anything else, it reduces you and seduces you and pulls you down and brings you down. Why? Because you become like what you worship. Only God is worthy of my worship. You hear what I'm saying? This is my favorite phone. I don't care about any other phone. They come on and talk about this is a good phone. I like this one. It's an Apple 5 something, 64, whatever. I like this phone. I said I wasn't going to buy the 6, but I'm going to just say, I'll see. I like it. I like the way it feels. I like the design. I like this phone. I really like this phone. I like Apple products. The iPad, iPod, desktop. I like all Apple stuff. I think Steve Jobs was a genius, died much too soon. I like my iPhone. You like your phone? Keep it. I like my phone. It has more technology in it than the spaceship that landed on the moon in 1969. Emails in my phone, notes in my phone, movies in my phone, songs in my phone, sermons in my phone. Whatever I want, I can do with this phone. Almost anything. I can take your picture. I can take your voice. I can take a moving picture of you and send it to somebody with my phone. But I don't do selfies. I don't know what helicopter that is. I don't take pictures of myself. Some of y'all are really busy. You taking pictures of yourself and then send them to somebody. Boy, I wish I had your kind of time. Take pictures of themselves and then send it to the world. I know what you look like. Well, anyway. But let me tell you something interesting. See this thing right here? It's the case I carry my phone in. Now, I like this case because it has a certain design on it, which design I happen to like. It's just me. But I made a discovery some time ago, and it scared me. If you gave me a choice, I'd rather lose this, which means I could never call you again, because I don't know your number. It's in here. The only number I know is my wife's, and the number to the church, and my home number. It's all in here. My whole life is in here. But if I walked out of here today and you couldn't find either one of these, I'd rather you find the case than the phone. There's a word for that. It's called stupid. This is the value. But in life, do you know what we do? We walk around glorifying the case and don't care if we lose what's really of value. We worship cases and not what really gets the job done. This case can't call you. This case can't connect with you, but we live like that. We worship the case, which is just the container. What's really important to you? Worship. You become like what we worship. You should have in your notes Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. That's the Syrophoenician woman who had a sick child. And when the Lord didn't pay her any attention and the disciples discouraged her, the Bible says she did what? She worshiped him. You get to God through worship. Elder Fowler told you last week, when you worship, God stops. You know why some of y'all can't stop God? You don't worship. When you feel sorry for yourself, he'll feel sorry for you too. Watch this. Now he'll come down from the sky. He'll wipe the tears from your eyes. But if you want God to move for you, worship. God will comfort you when you say, oh, come in, baby, let me rub your head. But if you want God to act for you, see, the Bible says God inhabits the praises of his people. It is not true that when praises go up, blessings come down. That is not true. When praises go up, God comes down. Lord have mercy. You should have in your notes 2 Kings chapter 4, beginning at verse 18. That's the Syrophoenician woman, the Shunammite woman, who lost her son. And she said, it is well. She prayed, it is well. She said, it is well. See, when you really trust God, remember I told you about God being above everything? It's well with you. See, with the believer, you always pray from the vantage point that it is well, even when it doesn't look well. Because of who God is. You don't ever pray from the standpoint that God is not God. So you don't ever pray like God is not God. You always pray like God is God. So it's well. That's why the next thing is, so we have worship, then we have thanksgiving. That's why be anxious for nothing, Philippians 4 and 8. Be anxious for nothing. Why? Because God is God. But everything by prayer and supplication with what? Thanksgiving. That means you're thanking God that since he is God, the situation is not in charge. No situation on earth is in charge. No situation on earth is in charge. And no situation on earth is greater than, stronger than, or in competition with God. It's just not. If it happened, he let it happen for a reason. And he's going to work it out according to his will. If you're a believer, it has to turn out all right. Repeat. If you're a believer, it has to turn out all right. Romans 8:20. And we know that it has to turn out all right. No matter what it feels like. No matter how it hurts, no matter how dark it is, no matter how hurtful it is, that doesn't matter. Going through it doesn't matter, but when you get through it, you'll see it. You might not see it now. Why do we call it Good Friday? That didn't look very good. But my God, how did it turn out? How did it turn out? So there's prayer, there's worship, then there's thanksgiving, Philippians 4 and 8. Then there's intercession. The best example of intercession is found in Genesis 18. Read it when you get home. Abraham is sitting in the door and in his tent door, just chilling. And up walks 3 men, and he sees them off the distance. And he said, uh-oh, I know who that is. He rushes to the tent and said, wife, get to cooking. Kill the best meat, the best bread. We have guests. We have special guests. And they talk to Abraham about special things. And they promise him at this time next year you'll have a son. And he says, and Sarah laughed. And she said, why did she laugh? She lied and said, I didn't laugh. God knows when you laugh. By the way, when you sit in church making those little comments, the Lord listening to you. You need to know that. But then he's listening to you everywhere you go. That's right. And then God says, watch this. Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? You can get to a certain place with God. He'll have to reveal his plans to you. Okay, I'm in deep water now. See, you can be a Christian. You can go to church. You can be good. Or you can get so close to God, he has to tell you what's really going on. He was getting ready to destroy Sodom, but he had to tell his friend. Because friends tell friends what's really going down. I can't hide it from him because that's my buddy. I want to be God's friend who he tells me this is what's about to happen. I want to know where all the prophets were. All the ones we send money to. All the ones that have us running to the altar telling us what color our curtains are and what color our underwear is. None of us warned us that a flood was going to take over New Orleans. Shouldn't the prophets have seen that? Shouldn't the psychics have seen that? They can see who I'm in love with, but they can't see that storm coming out the Gulf and the levees breaking. Come on, folks. If you can see stuff, why don't you win the lottery every time it comes out? You can see the numbers, can't you? And these folk with this voodoo, I don't understand it. You voodoo some Negro because he left you and went to live with another woman. You voodoo the preacher or the deacon or somebody made you mad. No, stop it. I told you some years ago, voodoo the bank president. And make him give you some money. And then forgive the loan. Voodoo the mayor and make him fix our streets. Voodoo these cops killing our boys. If you go stick pins in somebody, don't waste your time sticking pins in me. Stick pins in Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and the Tea Party. Stupid, I almost cussed. Stupid stuff. I didn't, I said almost. You voodooing some nigger because he left you. I saw something on Facebook today that said if you see your ex with somebody else, say remember this. Your parents always taught you to give your leftover toys to the less fortunate. You leave me, peace out. Let me tell you some of you young ladies don't understand why a lot of men don't come after you. A man stood at the subway station in Washington playing on a rare Stradivarius violin that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he played in that subway station magnificently. And the music filled the subway station. And two people stopped to listen. An elderly couple and a 9-year-old boy. Everybody else just walked on by. They had no idea. Some people don't see the value in you, and I don't want you to make the mistake of not seeing it in yourself. I'm a Stradivarius. I don't care what you think. Some folk don't even know what a Stradivarius is. Let me tell you this, and I'm done. There was a church having a church meeting. We have church meetings to just basically tell you what's going on, but we don't have them old-fashioned Baptist church meetings. Well, this is one of them old-fashioned church meetings. Deacon, well, I could tell by Deacon Barry, he knows what I'm talking about. You know what? I've seen some gang fights. I've been in church meetings. Gang fights wasn't that bad. Oh, baby, your pastor's been through. Well, this one pastor said, church, I think we ought to get a chandelier for our church. One deacon stood up and said, Brother Pastor, that's wrong with this church. You talking about a chandelier. Now, you're always spending the church's money like it's your money. It ain't your money, it's the people's money. A chandelier. A chandelier. What the devil we need with a chandelier? Just tired of you just ain't no pastor. You just I thought about this. Hold that for a moment. This one church, this one pastor told the minister of music he was going to fire him. And so he brought him in. He said, Brother Damien, I'm going to have to let you go. The people say you can't play and you can't sing. Brother Damien said, Brother Pastor, the same people say you can't preach. So the deacon said, chandelier. First of all, if we get a chandelier, who gonna play it? And beside, brother pastor, what this church needs is more light.